We took a week off last week because of how caught up I got in the rankings that I was putting out on the channel, but with another Friday coming upon us, we're back with another episode of Your Take, Not Mine, the series where I turn to you, the viewer, to submit some of your hottest and most interesting takes around the NBA world, and I then give my thoughts on the topics. Every Friday, I make a community post asking for the submissions, so if you want a chance to be included in the future, make sure to be on the lookout for it and leave a comment. Before we get started though, it turns out about 79% of you watching aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button because not only does it greatly benefit the channel, but I would also very much appreciate it. We're in the home stretch on our way to 100,000 subscribers, and the goal is to hit it by the end of the year, and I can only do it with your help. With that being said now, let's begin. The first submission we'll be discussing comes to us from the Xbox Black Belt, and he says that Al Horford can be an all-star again on a different team. Throughout his career, Horford has been a highly impactful two-way player at the center position, bringing a level of versatility and balance that any team would love. Starting with the Hawks and then going to the Celtics, he held down the middle of the floor superbly and was at the center of a lot of their success, because of his elite defense, his strong post play, and his smart decision-making as a passer. All of these things are why the 76ers wanted him last summer, but this year was easily his worst season arguably ever, and this take probably stems from the fact that he played out of position for a while with the Sixers. But here's why I strongly disagree with this idea. For one, the fit between him and Embiid was very clearly a problem as the Sixers' net rating plummeted when both shared the court, but Horford still got plenty of opportunity to play center this year because of injuries suffered by Embiid, and he still didn't play anywhere near all-star caliber in that span. His defensive impact is just simply not what it once was anymore. He's very visibly lost a step, and offensively, one of the most frustrating parts of his game was the fact that his touch around the basket was nowhere close to what it once was, missing a ton of post-up opportunities that he used to convert with ease. The fact of the matter is that he's lost a step and his all-star days are behind him. I do think he has the ability to be a more impactful player on another team, and he probably isn't actually as bad as he looked at times this year, but definitely not all-star-esque. The next take we'll be discussing comes from Itamar, and he says that the Memphis Grizzlies will not make the playoffs anytime soon. Going into the season last year, the Grizzlies were viewed by most as one of the weakest teams in the league because of how inexperienced and unproven a lot of their talent was, yet they came out and fought tooth and nail until the very end for a playoff spot, and even though they got beat out in the last game of the year by the Trailblazers, the effort they put in was valiant. Morant came out and showed the league that he's going to be a big-time player for the foreseeable future. Jaren Jackson Jr.'s development has ramped up a ton and should continue to do so moving forward, and a lot of the role players around those two have bought in. However, with all of that being said, they do still play in the Western Conference, so while I want to disagree with what Itamar said, I can't say with full certainty that he's wrong. There are a lot of good teams in the West that won't be going anywhere anytime soon, such as the Lakers, Nuggets, Clippers, Jazz, Rockets, Mavericks, and Trailblazers, and then teams like the Warriors will be back competing hard next year, the Suns and Pelicans are on the rise, and you can never count out the Spurs either. By no means will it be easy, but obviously they were also way ahead of schedule this season when nobody anticipated them coming anywhere close to a playoff berth. Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. are a very strong duo to build around, and even if it takes a few more years for everything to click, that's completely normal with a young team, and even still, I wouldn't put it past them to get the necessary pieces to make some noise in the near future. The next take we'll be discussing comes from Kabir, and he says that Jimmy Butler is getting too overhyped after his bubble performance and is not a top 10 player in the NBA over guys like Jason Tatum and Nikola Jokic. This take likely comes as a response to me putting out my player rankings and ranking Jimmy 10th on it, and I'm a firm believer in rewarding guys that perform in the biggest moments. Leading your team to the finals and giving the Lakers a real run for their money, all while playing without his his two best teammates in Bam Adebayo and Goran Dragic most of the series is no small feat, and is definitely not something you can simply gloss over. Trust me, I know his per-game numbers and statistical averages don't necessarily match up to some of the other top players in the league, like a Nikola Jokic or a Jason Tatum, as were used in the example here, but Butler literally led his team past Tatum this year, and the Celtics were also the better team on paper. Performance isn't always measured by the numbers, and Jimmy's impact goes far beyond that. Now with Jokic, I can't deny that he also had a phenomenal postseason this year, leading the Nuggets to the conference finals, and I do understand why some would prefer him over Jimmy, but I gave the edge to the player who led a finals team, and moving forward, obviously these rankings are subject to change. The next submission we'll be discussing comes to us from B7, and he says that Kawhi Leonard is not a leader. The Clippers' slander continues after their terribly disappointing season that ended on a blown 3-1 series lead to the Denver Nuggets, and Kawhi is the target this time. When he signed with the Clippers last summer, he was very much in the discussion for being the best player in the NBA, having just led the Raptors to their first ever championship, taking home the Finals MVP, and putting on a show all postseason long that year. This year, though, things didn't go nearly as well, and while I agree he no longer has much of an argument for the best player in the league, his leadership is now in question as well. When it comes to leadership, most people see that the people in these roles are the guys who are the most vocal and rally the team when they need it, and Kawhi is obviously not that kind of guy, being more reserved and less vocal than other stars. However, not all leadership needs to be as obvious and in your face as what I just described, and leading by example is definitely a form of leadership. Kawhi has always been someone that leads by example, while other players on the team have usually been the vocal leaders, and I think the problem with this year's Clippers team is that they didn't have any vocal leaders that commanded the respect of the locker room, which then led to chemistry issues. And finally, the last submission we'll be discussing comes to us from Ark, and he says that John Wall will be an MVP candidate next season. I'm sure many of you have seen the new Mike Korzemba video discussing John Wall, which has undoubtedly led to some excitement about his return to play next season, because it has been a while since we last saw him play. He ruptured his Achilles back in 2018, and he hasn't played since, which is a very long time to be out for. Achilles injuries are definitely no joke, and there are plenty of examples of players who never got back to their prior form after hurting them, but in this case, Wall has been so cautious, and he's been out so long working on getting back to 100% that I wouldn't put it past him to regain his prior all-star form. He's been healthy enough to be practicing fully since the end of last season, and he's also spoken about how the time off helped him heal in other areas that were bothering him throughout his career, which is obviously also very promising for him. However, with all of that being said, I really don't see him being an MVP candidate, because even at his peak he never was, and the Wizards likely won't win enough games next season for him to be in the conversation. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below your thoughts on these takes that we just discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.